Hello there, my name is Philippa Oakley. I'm the Principal Chiropractor at Acorn Health in Emsworth, and I wanted to talk to you today about slip discs actually. Now, it's something that we see an awful lot of in clinic, and I have a number of issues with the term slip disc, and I won't bore you with all of them, but the first one is obviously from a pain psychology perspective. I think the term slipped disc, much like trapped nerves, it conjures up these really awful images about what could be going on in your back. And we know that the way that people think and feel about their back pain can really influence how well they do from care. And actually, I think as healthcare professionals, we have to be really careful about the terms that we use to describe your back pain, because whilst it's a term that people are really familiar with, it's something that most people are quite comfortable with. If you say slip disc, they kind of go, oh yeah, I know what that means. From a practitioner's side of things, it's actually really quite damaging to say something like that to someone, because it does conjure up these awful images of discs slipping out of your back or slipping out of your spine rather, and slipping in and out of place, and nerves trapping in and out and things like that. And it's not clinically, it's a really inaccurate way to paint a picture of what's actually going on in someone's back. So that's one of the main reasons why I will never use the term slip disc in clinic. I just think it's a really nasty way to describe to someone what's going on in their back, and can actually scare people. Now, discs, if we talk a little bit about the anatomy of a disc. So a disc sits in between the bones, the vertebrae in your back, and it acts as a shock absorber. So they're fluid filled, and they have a little bit of give to them. They're supposed to be a little bit squishy. And the disc is made up of two parts. So there's an outer part, which is the annulus fibrosus, and then the inner part, which is the nucleus pulposus. And I'm not going to test you on those names later, but just thought you want to know. So we don't 100% know why disc injuries happen in everyone that they happen to. We know that there's an age prevalence, so as we get slightly older, our discs dehydrate slightly, so they become slightly more susceptible to wear and tear. That's also incidentally why we get a bit shorter as we get older. We know that repetitive loading, so forwards and backwards lifting and bending, that can increase your likelihood of disc injuries. And rotation and twisting can as well. It just causes micro injuries to the annulus fibrosus, that outer part of a disc. And we also know that there are other factors involved, such as people who have sedentary jobs, who spend a lot of time sitting, people who've got poor posture, smoking plays a role, people who aren't physically active, people who have a bad diet, people who are overweight. All of those things can contribute to the likelihood of you having a disc injury. Now, one of the $1 million questions that we deal with in clinic is why haven't I had an MRI? And the guidelines nowadays say that actually we don't MRI people for this sort of thing. So most modalities that we use to look at the spine, such as X-rays or MRIs, we are strongly discouraged not to send people for those kind of scans, as they show so many false alarms. So we spend 2 years learning what are called normal variants in radiology. So we spend 2 years just learning about normal things that you can have in your spine that are completely normal, but if they are found on an X-ray or an MRI, then it's very easy to say, oh well that's the reason why you've got back pain, is because you've got this finding. So one of the prime reasons for not taking an MRI for people is actually that we know in about 60% of people there'll be some kind of finding on an MRI. So there'll be some kind of disc protrusion, a disc bulge, or even in fact a sequestration, which is where the disc can actually protrude all the way down into the spinal canal. And I'm just going to put up an image which shows that actually it shows the prevalence of which people experience some kind of disc injury. And the really interesting thing that I found about this study, which was done in 2014, is that of these 3,000 people who were included in the study, not a single one of them had back pain. None of them had back pain whatsoever, but they found some kind of disc injury or some kind of disc anomaly on a huge percentage of them, as you can see from this slide. So the MRI findings are actually a really unreliable way to establish what's going on in your back. And of course, there are some cases where we do worry, and no practitioner, no chiropractor in their right mind would ignore what we call a red flag, so some kind of indicator of an underlying pathology. But actually, these abnormal findings, and I say that by doing little parentheses, which you can't see because you can't see me, but they're clinical red herrings, so they're fairly unremarkable, and yet for some reason they scare people quite badly, and they kind of restore this idea of your spine being this weak structure with a disc that's popped out of place, and oh my god, what's that going to do to me in later life, and yes, there are some people out there who would say that an MRI just to rule it out, or to see exactly what's going on in your back, that can be useful. But actually, having lots and lots of investigations, having lots of scans and lots of x-rays and things like that, they only serve to create fear. We know that they just cause a lot of worry for people, and the more investigations somebody's had, the worse they tend to do as a result of care, and the more catastrophically they think about their back pain. So actually, anything that we can do to normalise what's going on in your back, so for example, coming on here today and telling you that 60% of people will have some kind of disc injury, anything that we can do to normalise what's going on in your back is only going to help. So my closing thought today is really just to leave you with the idea that your spine is actually this fundamentally really stable structure. So discs don't just slip in and out, nerves don't get trapped and untrapped. Your spine is actually really well equipped to cope with most of the stresses and strains that you put on it in day-to-day life. And so yes, while saying that you've slipped a disc is quite an easy thing for a practitioner to say, it's just really damaging for you. It's psychologically misleading, it's clinically inaccurate. You know, there's many reasons that I could go into about why I don't like the term slip disc, and hopefully from today you can see that one of the main reasons for that is that actually a slip disc isn't necessarily the reason why you've got back pain, and in most cases it's not actually what's causing the pain in the first place. So at Acorn Health, we're much more interested in identifying sort of the underlying cause for the pain. So whether that's inflammation in the structures that surround your disc, whether that's restricted joint movement, muscle tension, nerve irritation, anything like that, that's what we're concerned about finding. It's much less to do with what's actually happened in that disc and more about how your body has reacted to it. So don't be worried if somebody has told you that you've got a slip disc, because that's probably not the problem. But do find out what the root cause of it is. And by all means, if you've got questions, if you'd like to let me know what you thought about my comments today in this talk, then please do get in touch. I'm always really keen to hear from people. And of course, if you need some help with your back pain, then please don't hesitate to give us a call at Acorn Health.